What's up, y'all? I'm Drake,
And I'm Christine.
and this is the Drake and Christine Show.
Mm-hmm.
And today we're going to talk about episode 4. We're going to talk about what was it? What was the topic?
So,
you found some video, right?
Yeah.
Okay.
So I watched this video. I think it was either on TikTok or Reels or something like that. And I was telling you about it after because I was like, this is so ridiculous.
Yeah.
Basically, the video was saying it was a girl and she was crying about something in her car. There wasn't much context, to be honest, but it just sounded really whiny and complaining.
Mm-hmm.
Basically, it was captioned like a 27 years old, and life is hard. Like life is tough. Like this adulting thing, and growing up is so hard.
Yeah,
right?
adulting.
And I was kind of just, it just made me kind of laugh because in my mind I was like, you're almost 30.
Yeah.
Like, you're closer to 30 than you are 20.
Yeah.
And you're upset about having to grow up, essentially.
It's funny because, like, when you said it, like, I think the first thing that I said was like, oh yeah, but like, back in the 1900s or 1800s or whatever, people were 12 years old and having to take over things, like actually having jobs. And I'm not saying that's best necessarily, but the responsibility that you had then, like just up until really recently, the responsibility that you had to have when you were younger was a lot more than most people take on in their adult lives today.
Yeah.
And if you really think about it, in third world countries, it's very much still like that. The amount of responsibility that you have to take as far as like just surviving.
Yeah.
And one of the examples that I was looking at was Captain Farragut, who he was like, he fought in I think it was the War of 1812, right? He would have been about like, okay, so basically this was a kid who was working on a ship at 9 years old. And by the time he was 12 years old, basically he was the prize master on the ship, which prize master, I had to look that up, but basically it's the person who, whenever you get something from somebody else's ship or whatever, like the loot or, the enemy's goods, they call that the prize. And he was the one who was like in control, in charge of all that. Yeah.
And he was 12?
And he was 12 years old,
Jesus.
right? And then he went on and became basically the leader of, I guess what would become the U.S. Navy, right? But I'm just sharing that because it's not a necessarily unique story. It's not the only one. Like, there's so many people throughout history, they started working when they were 12.
Yeah.
Like
just in like their teen years, like.
Yeah.
Yeah, just taking on more responsibility. I mean, people used to get married and have children so much younger.
Right.
And just having to really grow up in a way that you were an adult. Right?
Yeah.
And you had to do certain things.
And again, it's not necessarily that like being like, oh, you should start working at 12 years old, right? It's not necessarily that, but it's really like to be able to take on that responsibility successfly, you have to be doing a lot. Like, you have to know a lot. You have to be prepared.
Right.
You're not just gonna start like, oh, we should get every 12-year-old in a factory and working. No, obviously that's retarded. I'm not saying that, right? But think about, like, we're over here at the Coke Space, right? And Max is 5 years old and he's putting electronic circuits together himself. He's also right now on the other side of the house doing a slip and slide, which is awesome, right? But it means, okay, you would think, oh, he's building circuits at 5 years old, must be a very serious child,
Yeah.
Must be like, oh, he can do math, he can read novels, all that stuff. Like, the way that some people take that on is like, oh, it must be very serious.
Yeah, like he's not a fun kid,
right?
Or something.
But actually, like,
the total opposite.
Yeah.
But not even just in him doing that sort of stuff, because those are things that he's interested in and kind of doing as hobbies, but just in Max's maturity of being able to do things for himself as a 5-year-old, like making himself a sandwich, you know, turning on the oven to cook himself like chicken nuggets or something. Like he's able to just do like very basic things that a lot of parents wouldn't want to let their kid do that just out of fear of making a mess.
Dude,
or
a lot of parents don't let their kids pick out their own fucking socks.
Right.
You know, like it's like no, I will lay out all your clothes.
Yeah.
You know, like how will they develop that? And you know, that's a common thing that's said is, okay, if you make all the decisions for your children, how are they going to develop to make decisions for themselves when they become adults?
Yeah, exactly.
Right?
I mean, I'm sure both of us can speak from our own childhoods.
Yeah.
Like, my mom, just from culturally and my upbringing, like, and I think it was the same for you, you know, just wanting to present yourself in a certain way, always look dressed up. Like, they, you know, making my outfits, especially when I was super young, you know, making sure that you were dressed well, had your hair down.
When I was a kid, I always had to wear slacks or khakis and a dress shirt or a polo. Yeah. And it was almost always tucked in with a belt.
Oh yeah, I used to wear belts too and suspenders.
Oh,
did you ever wear suspenders?
I did not wear suspenders.
I used to wear
I'm surprised that my mom.
Hair.
Yeah, I'm surprised my mom didn't make me wear suspenders.
That's hilarious. I definitely had suspenders.
Okay, but I remember on Fridays I was allowed to wear jeans. It was as if I was like in the workplace.
Yeah.
You know, like casual Friday. And
that's
like
hilarious.
Those would be my favorite because I could finally dress like the other kids. You know,
like how I wanted to, kind of thing.
Yeah. But I remember that being like such a point of like I couldn't decide what I wanted to wear, and I was always frustrated by that. You know.
It for me it became such a point of rebellion with my family, like when I was in my preteen years, where I wanted to wear certain types of clothing, like big t-shirts, dark clothing like black and blue and all this, and jeans. And my mom hated that.
Yeah.
She was just like, come on, like you're a girl, like you need to wear you know, pink, you know what I mean, just like brighter colors, like you're too young to be wearing colors like that.
Yeah.
And I didn't understand. I was like, it's just clothes.
Yeah.
Like, who cares kind of thing, right?
Yeah.
But I guess we were talking about the point of
taking responsibility.
Exactly.
Yeah.
Where if you, I mean, okay, another example, like in my own family, like some of my cousins, like their parents wouldn't let them feed themselves, like in terms of like cutting their food and spooning the food in them, like until they were in like late elementary school.
Oh wow.
You know what I mean?
Yeah.
Like to make sure that they wouldn't get dirty.
Oh wow. What?
You know? Yes. Like to that extreme, right?
See,
and then that
like,
doesn't develop any sort of like independence. And then
wait, hang on, because there's a big point right there, right? Big point is just like, okay, so many parents, they make these decisions not based on anything practical. It's like,
well, in their mind it's practical.
In their mind it is practical.
Because they don't, you know, it's like you're gonna get it dirty, you're gonna
like in the grand scheme of things, like what does that actually matter?
Yeah. It's
a child. Nobody's judging your child because like they got a little stain. Like, yeah, I would expect to see some stains on their shirts and stuff, you know? Because like we're all children. We were all children. And it's like, it's almost as if people forget what it is to be a child and introduced into this world and like discovering things.
Yeah, but that's just because the adults in their world when they were growing up were, again, treating them in that way, where they were hardened to the expression of a child. That's just like a natural curiosity, a natural just like they're okay with failing, all these, you know what I mean, like making a mess.
But
like,
also, okay, where are those kids going that they have to be fed and look presentable and all that stuff? To school, right? Because if your kid's at home all day with you, like, what do you care if they're presentable or not? Right? And this is the other problem is like, okay, they're going to school. What else do you learn at school? You learn discipline, obedience, not to make mistakes. Yeah. You can't make mistakes.
Right.
Because if you make a mistake, you get punished for it.
Yeah.
And sure, it may not be like a slap on the wrist or anything, but your grade goes down. And then when your grade goes down, what happens? Now your parents are like, why are your grades bad? You know, and like, it's this psychological manipulation on so many levels.
Yeah.
You know, and it's shaping society literally. Like, that is what shapes society. It's not just that you don't learn much at school, but what you do learn a lot of is how to behave socially.
Yeah.
In the context of what is acceptable, not based on anything real, just based on what school wants to implement. And you could say school, or you could say the system, or like just, it's kind of like we've started a machine and it just is going. And then nobody's at the helm, like directing it at all. Nobody knows why the machine does this or that. It's just like, we just go along with the machine, feed the machine. We have to feed the machine or we all die. It's like, nobody's questioning that. Back to the point of, because kids, the way that they're raised is like with all these arbitrary rules. Arbitrary from the sense of, like, how does this actually help your life? How are we shaping our society in terms of what we actually want to create in this world? People always talk about, like, man, in the future we'll end world hunger, and we'll have the technology so that everyone can eradicate diseases and all this stuff. But yet the way that we actually live today, which is going to shape the reality of tomorrow, the way that we actually live is like, yeah, but that can't be done now, so we'll just put it off. It's almost as if, like, in the future I'm gonna cook this steak, but I can't do it now, and so you just like keep putting it off. You never cook the steak.
Right.
You're never gonna have a steak. And like, it's also this point of, because we don't take responsibility as adults now. Okay, now you're an adult, you have to take responsibility, right?
Yeah, like, you pretty much have no choice, but then no one prepared you. It's almost like,
exactly,
like if you're learning how to do any sort of skill,
right,
where like it gets to a point to get it to a level of mastery,
right.
So it's interesting how you get prepared to go to college, go to university, go to prepare for like a job, so to speak, in a certain way because of school, right? But then no one actually tells you or prepares you like how to prepare for life,
right?
Like just life, the day-to-day things, right? Like how to pay bills, or like what it takes to own a house, or really like a lot of the things just come down to like how to use how you need to use your money, essentially, right?
Why is that not taught in schools if schools are supposed to be educational?
Right.
Keep picking the thing.
So anyways, what I was trying to say with that is why this video of this girl was so, I mean, just pointing out something so obvious to me is the fact that people are not being prepared effectively of like how to grow up and live and take responsibility for their life.
Right.
That then they're having these mental and nervous breakdowns saying that this is hard and no one prepared me for this. And it's like, yeah, exactly. That was kind of the point, right?
Yeah.
But it's like, now you're falling into this like, which it's to me, it's also a big reason why like mental health and like disorders are so on the rise, is because of like this unpreparedness for life that then causes anxiety, depression, all these different things, because you're like, wow, things are not how I was told it was gonna be. This like almost welcome to the real world kind of thing. Like school is so removed from that, that then when you get put in it, you're like, it's like a shock to people. Because I know I experienced that too. Maybe you did too. Like when I was in university, that's what I felt like. Especially when I was done, I was like, how did that prepare me for anything that I have to actually do now? Right,
exactly. So, okay, the reality of it is like, okay, now you're not prepared, and then you go and have kids and they're not prepared.
Yeah, because you just pass on the same patterns and stuff that you were taught.
So the least that you could do is prepare your children. That's the very least that you could do.
Yeah, that's how you actually start changing things.
But there was another point that I wanted to make within that, and the point is not actually taking responsibility, because because things were done for you or whatever. Now you're an adult, and now you're like, oh, I just wish it would be easier. It's like, no, you have to be the one to take the responsibility.
Yeah.
And it's like people are still hoping that, oh, someone in the future will do this. The government will come and do this, or
it's their responsibility to protect and to
this doctor, that person, this expert, whatever. Yeah. And it's like, no, that's not going to happen. it's the point is, if we want this world to change, we can't just leave it up to the future, somebody else,
the government, chance,
God. Any of that stuff. You're, in essence, making believe like there's something outside of you that is watching over you and is going to do it for you. But that's just a fantasy.
Yeah.
You know, and we all do it to a certain extent.
100%.
You know?
Because you almost are given, like, no choice. I mean, it seems like
it feels better.
Yeah.
You know?
But then you're just lying to yourself. And deluding yourself, and then people are reinforcing that delusion and that that disbelief, basically, until you're hit with the reality of things, and then that's when things really get shaken up and you're like, oh crap. Exactly. Like, now I have to either deal with this or suppress it in some sort of way and cope.
And either way it shapes your reality.
Right.
Either way it shapes your reality. And what I mean by that is all these people who are now adults, who have no idea how to tie their own shoes. Now it's like, okay, what else can those who do have some influence, what else can they do other than just corral them? Like, you can't do shit.
What does that mean?
Corral? Like, as in, like, I'm going to direct you, like, as if you're a herd of cattle, you know? Where I'm just going to, like, move you to do what I want you to do because you can't take care of yourself.
Right. Which is now what the government is doing.
Which is now what, like, so many people are doing. That's what we're seeing, like, with Bill Gates, what we're seeing with, like, you know, basically every elite figure on some level is just like, you can't handle it, I'm going to do it for you. Right? And it's not like, oh, well, if only one of those guys were good and they came in and did it for us. That's not what we're asking for either. Like, what we're...
Because it's not going to take one person, right?
It can't.
Yeah.
It can't, because either way...
It would have already been done.
So many people are so...
There's been so many Gandhis and gurus and all these sorts of people that, you know, are apparently showing the way to, like, a better life.
Yeah.
And yet, look at this. You can honestly argue that the world is actually getting worse.
Yeah.
Because of this idea.
How many, like, people... I don't know if people still do this, but I remember growing up, people would be like, you're going to be the next Gandhi, you're going to be the next Martin Luther, you're going to be the next Jesus.
People 100%.
You know, like, they say that to kids all the time, where it's just
the
like,
next Jesus.
Yeah, you're going to grow up and you're going to change this world, hopefully, because it's
and
like...
And then you have psycho people, though, that, I mean, like, people that are unstable.
That are delusional.
Yeah, who will say, I am the second coming of Jesus Christ.
Sure, but that's how you know they're delusional, because they can't even see that it's not going to be a savior. Like, it's not going to be a single person that comes and saves us all from ourselves. It's, we have to save ourselves from ourselves. We're the ones, like, who are constantly, to put a visual to it, we're constantly stabbing ourselves and going, when will somebody help me and stop this pain that I'm feeling? It's like, you stop it.
Right.
You know?
Yeah.
Like, it's literally stop hitting yourself.
And it's hard. I mean, and that's the thing. It's hard when the people around you are just doing the exact same thing as what everyone else is doing, in the sense of just going along with what they were taught, and just trying to get by and just trying to survive. Yeah. Right. So that's where, like, you know, you really have to have, like, your own directive will. Yeah. And have people around you that will support you. Yeah. Right. Like what we have in Self-Perfected and with Techno-Tutor and all these different things, like, having people that are serious, right? Because they're living within a principle of, like, no, I actually want to live a better life and do it as best. Yeah, I think a lot of people, they have not seen an example of it. 100%. You know, obviously. And, you know, I can definitely sympathize with that, because for me, one thing that I had not seen an example of was a mother and father together in my home. Right. And I was just really curious, like, how does that even work? And, you know, I came to the residence of the people that we're visiting right now to see that firsthand, and that really shifted things for me, where I was just like, wow, it is possible. Yeah. Like, and this is how you do it. Right. And that's exactly what we have in those groups that you mentioned, in Self-Perfected, in Techno-Tutor, where it's just like, yeah, this is what we're talking about, how to take responsibility actually. Yeah. And so if it's something that you've never seen before, you should check it out, because what we're doing is
beyond just talking about it, but actually living it and helping other people to live it as well. And that's what's needed. We need that in mass scale.
Yeah.
We want to make a difference in this world, or if we just even want to live the life that we want to have.
Yeah, and that's the thing. It's like, if you be the change that you wish to see in the world,
right?
Like that's not just some cool oversimplified quote.
Yeah,
it's very practical in the sense that you need to change if you're expecting the outer to change in terms of like other people, because then you'll be the point of influence for others and the point of inspiration.
Yeah,
and that's what like Cameron and Katie, right, that we're visiting right now, that's what they were willing to do.
Yeah,
be the people that are doing the complete opposite of what it has become the norm, and take a lot of the the hate and the slack and the people being like, what do you know, but and a lot of people, and it's because it's tough, like it's not for the faint-hearted, right?
So okay, be the change that you want to be, but go all the way with it, right? Like don't just half-ass it. Exactly. Imagine if, like, to use a silly example, imagine if you just half did the dishes. And like no one else in your home.
I mean, sometimes I do that, especially when I get tired.
But it just creates more work for you. Yeah. Right. You still have to do it later on. I always regret it
the next day. It's never the best.
And we were talking with one of our friends, and he was saying, like, in his home, like he's got a bunch of roommates and everything. He's in college, and he was saying in his home that no one does the dishes, and so there's just a pile of nasty, dirty dishes that has just been sitting there and festering, and it's all this point of like, oh, I don't want to do it because it's a lot of work, and then the other person doesn't want to do it, and nobody wants to like
and
even
also
wash their
another
home.
Example of like, if you don't have that developed within you to just do the dishes because in your home your mom always did them, or you always had the dishwasher running or whatever, it's not in your reality, and then you're just never like, you just don't have that will to even do it because you're like, it's so it's like it's like when your body, when you build muscle, right, when you go to the gym, and then when you stop working out, you lose that muscle because there's no use for it. And your body is very good at conserving and using the energy, right? But that's on purpose, right? Because it's like, I'm not going to maintain something that is not being used, right? So it's the same thing with like doing the dishes, for example. It's like you have you and your mind have no use for that because you've never developed that point. So bringing it back to like practicality, right, of just like being responsible. Exactly, being responsible, like, and your body is very responsible. But okay, so you have to develop that for yourself, of actually taking responsibility in this world, in this life. And if you just half-ass it, you're going to leave a lot of responsibility or a lot of dishes in the sink for someone else to pick up or for you to do later on. And it still has to get done. And then it's going to be even more painful, grueling, unmotivating. I don't know if I shared this story. I don't know where I shared this story. Oh, I shared it on my Facebook. But the fable of the donkey and the mule, right? A donkey and a mule are climbing up, I don't know, some path or whatever, and they both have really heavy loads. The donkey turns to the mule and says, hey man, this pack that I'm carrying is really heavy. I'm slipping. Could you just take like a little bit of this? I can carry the rest, but I'm struggling here. And the mule says, no, I don't, that's not my responsibility. But they work for the same master, they're on the same path, they're going the same direction, and the mule can take more, but he's like, that's not, right? And what happens is the donkey slips of exhaustion, falls down the side of the cliff, and they lose it all, and dies. Dies. And the master goes down, skins the donkey, takes everything that he was carrying, puts it on the mule and the skin, and the mule's like, fuck, now I have even more responsibility. Right? And, there's a lot of different ways that you can interpret that, but in this context, it's like, just take on the responsibility that you can, because otherwise you're going to end up with more because you didn't do it now. And that's what's happening. It's like, because the people before us have not taken the responsibility, that needs to be done in order to move and change
Yeah.
like the whole of society.
Yeah.
That's why us now are taking on the responsibility
Right.
to actually do that stuff, and it's fucking difficult because there's a lot of like, you could call it baggage, you know, and things to work through.
But think of the alternative. Totally worth it. Think of the alternative. Exactly. The part that's worth it is, okay, now we could create what we actually wanted as kids, where you could just be a kid and just run around and enjoy life, and you can like forever have that innocence. Not necessarily that you're dumb, you don't know things, but innocence as in like
you get to explore and be curious,
and you get to learn and like constantly have that like, yes, I love living.
Honestly though, like, I know people would argue though, especially parents like of our like of our age, like parents, I mean, that were like our parents, right? Not like parents of our age, but like our parents would argue though that I did give you that, right?
No, maybe some would, but that's not possible unless we have a system.
Because they're gonna think like, well, no, the obedience and the punishment was actually necessary.
Yeah, but that's not necessary.
No, I know.
That's not necessary, and we know that now.
You're right.
Right? And so we also know that that's not possible until, hey Cam, we create a world where everyone is taken care of equally. Because if even one child is abused or is starving, or like, they're going to grow up with that point where they're going to want to abuse or you know, create some consequence on everyone else around them.
Yeah.
You know?
But that's because it was just done to them.
Exactly. Right. Exactly. I'm not blaming them. I'm just saying, like, that is the point. That is the case. And so we have to create for everyone the ability where we're all taken care of. And that starts with education, right? Yeah. But come join our group, come join Self-Perfected, and get that education. Like, you know, in the details of this video or the description, you know, there's a little link. You can just click that, reach out.
Yeah.
Cool. So we'll leave it there. See you next time. Bye.